If you've been to Toronto recently, then you know a building boom is underway, and now we're learning that the city leads the Western world in constructing high-rises. According to new research from the Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat, Toronto is currently at the epicenter of tall building development with 15 skyscrapers that are 45 stories plus currently under construction. Antony Wood is the Council's Executive Director, and he joins us this morning from Chicago. Thank you very much for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Scott.
So how do you explain this boom that's going on in Toronto? Does it make sense, and are these towers all being filled?
Well, I mean, it's symptomatic of what's been going on around the world over the last 10, 15 years. There's been a booming construction, tall building construction that's unprecedented, really, in the history of mankind. And I think it's been driven by a number of factors, and I think the buildings are being filled. The major shift, of course, is that they're predominantly residential buildings. 10, 15 years ago, these buildings were more likely to have been office, but there's been this resurgence of people wanting to live back in the city.
How do you explain that this is happening in Canada?
Well, that's interesting. I think the reason it's been happening in Canada as opposed to most of the Western world is that your economic fundamentals were much better and rode out the 2008, 2009 economic crisis better. So, the US and many countries in Europe were not in a position to be continuing the boom of tall buildings that they'd seen for 10 years. So that wasn't what was driving it. It wasn't like, hey, you came out of the economic crisis, we got all this money, how are we going to spend it? The drivers are more fundamental than that, but certainly the economics played a big part.
How does it compare to the United States, what's going on in Canada and specifically in Toronto?
Well, Toronto is the most active tall building construction city in the Western Hemisphere. It's closely followed by Istanbul in Turkey, then New York, and then London. So it has more tall buildings, 150 meters or above, under construction than any other city, in the Western Hemisphere. However, Western Hemisphere, if you compare it to the Eastern Hemisphere, China and India and other places in Southeast Asia, there's no comparison. But certainly it's a lot more active, building a lot more tall buildings than anywhere else in the West.
And you've singled out a couple of standouts in the Toronto area. Why have you singled them out, and which ones are they?
The reason that we conducted this study is because we knew about this high construction in Toronto, but it's also in Canada, in other areas, in Calgary and Vancouver. So that's what kind of prompted us to do this study. But there was another reason as well, and that's we award the best tall buildings every year from around the world. And twice in the last 4 years, a Canadian building has won the best tall building in the Americas. This year it was the Absolute Towers in Mississauga, and 3-4 years ago it was the Manitoba Hydro Place up in Winnipeg. And I'm a professor of architecture, and that's what interests me. It's not just, hey, there's lots of great tall buildings being built of great height. It's the quality of some of these buildings, and those are, on a world scale, they're pretty important buildings.
Antony Wood, Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.